Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith. And listen, I'm just a girl still stuck in her apartment, still looking for more people to talk to. So, Broadway actor turned baker Max Kumangai is here to speak with us today about his pandemic pivot during the Broadway shutdown. But before we get into all of that, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Let's Talk About It YouTube channel. I don't want you missing when new episodes come out. And make sure when you do, you hit that little notification bell right there so you never miss a video. Go ahead, like and subscribe, little notification bell. Did you do it? Okay, great. Let's get started then. Max, thanks so much for being here. Let's talk about it.
Oh my gosh, Meredith, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yes, and then soon we'll be tasting and talking about some incredible bread. Let's talk about Hump Day Dough and how this all got started.
So many people had the time to bake sourdough.
Yeah.
Because we were doing nothing. So I decided to take my try at it, and I became obsessed. The therapeutic benefits of baking was full throttle. I was dependent on it. And so really? I wanted to make it an everyday thing, right? And it was kind of the end of the summer, last summer, and I was anticipating the dead of the winter and not seeing anybody and becoming a hermit. And I was like, no, I need to set up something where I can actually connect with people and connect with the performers and cast members that I hadn't seen, in 4 months at the time. And then eventually did a grand opening with a website. We've been baking for whoever wants it in Manhattan.
But when did you start baking? Because I won't even call it, you were on Broadway before the shutdown.
Yeah.
So when did baking, were you always a baker? Were you just a hobby baker?
Yes, I definitely a hobby baker. I mean, there's so many pictures of me as a kid, just flour all over my face in the kitchen with my mom. And then I actually really kind of committing to baking when I did Waitress, the musical about baking pies.
Mm-hmm.
And I really got obsessed with baking pies. I baked pies and brought them in all the time, and so I, my obsession with that started then. It's such a creative process too. You feel like you're a scientist and you're making something out of nothing. And it's amazing. It's really fed me, definitely.
The creative process you found through baking, did it replace the lack of creativity that we all, lost when the theater shut down last year?
Oh, absolutely. The creative juices with baking were saving me, honestly. I've taken a little artistic step back. I haven't been singing a lot. I haven't really been dancing really to keep my chops up. But
it's not like Waitress when your baking process does not look like what baking can do when you're singing to the sugar, butter, and eggs. Max.
It kind of does look like that. No, it doesn't.
Nor does mine, by the way. Not that anybody wants to hear me sing.
That's amazing. But the creative side of my brain is totally satiated when I bake, when I'm putting things together in a bowl and I'm creating literally something that can feed a whole community out of just powder and water. You know what I mean? Flour and water. It's just such a simple yet so providing thing,
Do you find that as do you link the two art forms in that way?
Yeah. I mean,
who would have thought baking is similar to Broadway, but I'm feeling it's a very, very similar link.
Absolutely. Especially with sourdough, there's this thing called the bulk fermentation, wherein you do 2 seconds of work and then you let it rest. And I feel like the pandemic has been the bulk fermentation for all artists. We were doing so much work and we were going, And then we just have to be okay with putting it on rest. And like, it's gonna come back. It's gonna make us stronger. It's gonna build character. So I've been really tying those two, parallels together, really.
I do think you should start singing as you bake.
Okay, honestly, that's what everyone is wanting. And I've had some ideas floating around on how to like ease into that without making it seem cheesy.
Okay.
But
Let's work through it. Let's work through it.
Let's work through it.
I mean, I'm here for it. I don't feel the cheese. I'm here for it.
Right, I know. And I just did another like little interview, and she was saying like, you should name the loaves after like the songs in your show, or like your favorite shows. Like you get the like Bye Bye Birdie loaf, and like you get the, you know what I mean? Somehow connecting like the theater more. Yeah. I don't know. We're still figuring it out.
You're figuring it out. All right. Well, indulge me. You do the sourdough, you do focaccia, pancakes, and crackers. What would you be baking for Jagged Little Pill?
Well, it's funny because MJ, the lead character, we start out with the show, she's baking pancakes. But
that's
so
right.
that could work.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm wanting to do some sort of like pizza dough, sourdough pizza dough.
Okay.
With Jagged Little Pill. What is the baked good for Jagged Little Pill? Like a crunchy sourdough chocolate chip cookie, like with jagged shards of chocolate. You know what I mean?
That's
I don't know.
That's
I
perfect.
don't know.
Perfect. What about for Hamilton? What would you bake for Hamilton?
Ooh, it would be like a hot crust bun. Like, don't you think they had hot crust buns back then?
Yes. Okay, and that's like perfect for this season too. All right, and let's go a little bit more old school. Although when you think about it, how much more old school can you get than Hamilton? But what would you bake for Chicago?
Right. Oh, I would like a cannoli. You know what I mean? Just like, I don't know, something Italian, and like like maybe a old standby.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. That makes sense. And it's also delicious. So I yes to all of that. How has, and when you think about the traditional schedule of both a Broadway performer and a baker, they're very different. You think with a baker, it's time to get up and make the donuts, crack of dawn, versus a Broadway performer is probably crack of dawn is more like noon. So how has like the pandemic changed your working schedule since it went from performing to now professional baking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, during Jagged, I would get home at like 10:40, and would be up till like 1:00 every night. As a baker, like there's this thing called sourdough starter, which you have to feed like a baby twice a day, and it has to be like exactly 12 hours apart. So in order to get a loaf out at a proper time that you could deliver it, I have to bake super early, or prep super early. So I'm usually waking up at like 6:37 to kind of start the process.
So you do have a traditional baker schedule, even though you're not a brick and mortar yet, you do still have that.
I do, definitely. And it just helps me feel like I'm going to work by like waking myself up and I'm instantly doing it, instead of like, tossing and turning in bed until, I don't know. But I also don't have anything to do at night, so it's easier to to wake up earlier,
Got it.
Yeah.
How do you hope to balance this new business once Broadway comes back? I mean, as you said, you're very lucky. You are going to have a job, hopefully from this fall, right? So how are you going to now balance this business? I hope the bread's not going anywhere.
My whole Hump Day Dough experience has taught me like, oh, this is something that can be a constant, that's gonna feed me. I connect with people. It's so fun to like give someone food. It's like the most rewarding thing. So I definitely want to fold it into my return to Broadway, but I'm not, it's got, some things are gonna have to change. Like I'm gonna have to like make it more of a finite community, like maybe just bake for the Broadway community, like drop off loaves at Hamilton and drop off loaves at, these are all like ideas floating in the, I haven't really grasped onto it yet because I'm like anxious that we are going back maybe soon. Ah! But yes, I definitely want to keep it a thing in my life. And it's also awesome to be your own boss. And it's like, it's so cool. Like as performers, as actors, you're constantly like answering to the director, what the director's needs, and the, you know, your cast member, and you're lifting people in the air, and like you have to, the producer wants you to do this. But with this company, I'm like, if I don't want to bake, I just don't bake and don't put the loaves on the website. Like it's awesome that I get a little control, you know, and especially during this time when everything feels so out of control. Like I'm learning that this can help me like stay afloat, you know.
Did you expect to have that feeling from like this pivot? I mean, you're finding such like positives out of, you know, this time of shutdown.
Yeah, no, I didn't at all. And it was really a push from my boyfriend, my partner, Michael. He saw me kind of like, you know, becoming a recluse. And he's like, you just need to find something that you are in control of, that you can like pour your heart into and take care of. And we together like built this business, and it's really like, it's been amazing to share that with him and work on it with him. So it's yeah, I never anticipating it kind of saving our pandemic life, you know.
What advice would you give for, you know, anyone? You know, we're all still dealing with the pandemic, and so many of us are thinking about what can I do to pivot, maybe find parallel in something else. But it's intimidating. It's real intimidating.
Anything that you love doing can be a pivot, and don't judge yourself on it. Like I was like, I'm just baking loaves for people. Like that seems so out of my idea of who I am, you know. But it's totally taught me so many things about myself, about what I love to do, about what feeds me, about what connects me to people. So I guess just don't have judgments on your interests, and really, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And trust that you can do other things besides sing and act or produce a show, or, you know, like you are a multifaceted human being. And sometimes I didn't know I was until the pandemic. You know what I mean?
There's that old adage, especially for actors, like if you can do anything else, go do it. So rather than, you know, pursue this, but if you're actually doing it, you don't go and do something else until you're not, because of, you know, our crazy world. Okay, last piece of advice for home bakers or those wanting to try bread. I mean, like I'm real intimidated. I like to bake. I like to cook. I'm intimidated by bread. I'm afraid of yeast. What's your advice? I really am.
God.
I don't want to do yeast.
I hear your struggles. All you need is like patience and trust that you are doing the right thing, because there's always a point with like making a sourdough starters from scratch, and like kneading the dough, when you're like not trusting your instincts, and that's when you mess up. What you have to do is trust your instincts, because you really are just taking care of an organism. That's what you're doing. It's so cool. So like everyone has that instinct to like care for something. So just use that. You know what I mean?
All right.
And
I have a husband and
time.
a dog, so okay. So this gives me hope that I can take on it. I've kept them alive, so all right.
Yeah,
all right. Right. So
yeah, exactly.
I went to my pandemic baking. I was more inclined to try French pastry than I was bread.
Really?
Yeah, I did macaroni for a little bit.
Oh my gosh. And those are really tricky.
They're really tricky and they're so time consuming. And I had like, rage. They were good. They were bad. They were good. They were bad. I raged. I, rejoiced. I went through all the
Same.
emotions, but I wouldn't try
Same.
bread. I wouldn't do it. So, okay, here we go. We're going to, I think I can. I think I can.
You
But
absolutely
after I
can.
try bread, so. Pushing it up.
You absolutely can. And I would still consider myself a beginner. Like there's so much more for me to learn. I recently went up to Stone Farms, Blue Hill, and shadowed their professional bakers up there. Got to meet some amazing chefs and bakers. And I was like, oh, shit, bitch, you don't know anything. Like you need to sit down and you know what I mean, and learn something. So I totally get the like intimidation of it all, but they all had to start in the same place I'm starting. So that kind of like propels me forward a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, Max, thank you so much for talking today. The breads look delicious, and Broadway hopefully is going to come back soon and feed us in a different way, right?
Yes. Thank you so much, Meredith, for having me. It's great to talk with you, and you're amazing to like share our stories on your YouTube page. It's awesome.
Your community is what connects me, and you are connecting the community through the bread right now. So appreciation all around.
It's good to chat.
Absolutely. This has been Let's Talk About It. We will talk to you next time.